Hey, how you doing, Audrey? Oh, you're muted, but I assume you're returning the greeting, as always.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I just
Okay.
finished some
Hello.
exercise Zooms.
Hi.
So
Oh, great, and welcome Phyllis. Good to see you.
Hello.
Phyllis, Shalom
Hi, Phyllis.
Aleichem.
Hello.
Phyllis,
Alechem Shalom.
It's a
Alechem
pleasure.
Shalom.
It's a pleasure to study with a fellow Ramaz graduate. Continue studies.
Oh, wow, I didn't know you were both Ramaz.
Yes,
Yeah,
I graduated from high school. I don't know if Richard did, though.
I went as far as I went from K through 9, and then I went to public school, public high school. Yeah, and
Well, I went from 5 through high school.
5 through high school.
Wow.
But
Awesome.
before that, before that, I went to Yeshiva Academy for Girls.
Wow.
So
I should mention this, Phyllis, that today is the yahrzeit of my mom, who was a brilliant teacher of Torah and a daughter of a rabbi, famous rabbi in Manhattan. And even though I left the religious education, I was not very far from religious atmosphere, because she created a tremendous Torah atmosphere for all of us. All 4 of us went to Ramaz, and it was a great experience. I look back on. I'm still in
Why
contact.
did you leave? I'm just curious. Why did you leave?
I left because I was living in a very secular area in Mount Vernon, and all my neighbors, they were either going to Fieldston School, Riverdale School, Horace Mann, and I insisted my dad send me to Horace Mann. He said no. He said, you either stay in Ramaz, the best school in the country, or you go to public school. I said, I'm going to public school. So that's the reason I did that. I was very independent, and I'm glad I did it, because it really opened up me to living in the community. I was part of the community, and I have friends from Mount Vernon to this day, 60 years later, still close to them. It's a great experience,
Wow.
I like your artwork.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's not my artwork. Thanks for the compliment, but I think there's a Monet back here, and my cousin.
I said I like it. Whatever it is, I like it. I see Hebrew
Monet.
lettering, and I see, nice stuff.
Okay, great. Good to see you guys. Who's with us on the phone? Is that someone else here?
Maybe Melissa got on?
That's not her number, but whoever you are, welcome, and we're glad to have you with us as well. All right, so let me just introduce our good friend, Dr. Richard Schwartz, who's with us.
Doctor, I didn't know he was doctor.
Now I know I don't really need to introduce Richard.
Phyllis, you're not supposed to know everything at one time.
So the funny thing is that since I'm recording a Zoom session, I can't actually look at my my tab I have open with all of Richard's many accomplishments. But I think something that we do know about Richard is that he's been very involved in literature for a while, has a doctorate, has been studying it for many years and teaching it for many years as well. Richard, you're still teaching at a high school as well. And what Richard does is he dedicates a lot of his time to volunteering and bringing his expertise of literature and writing to the masses. He was involved in working with Israelis to focus on Israeli literature and culture, but also with different organizations in the Stamford area, most notably, of course, the Sisterhood of Agudath Sholom, our own shul. So, Richard, you could fill me in, because I don't have the list of organizations with me, but there are numerous organizations in the Stamford area and beyond that Richard has worked with. So I'm very excited to be partnering with Richard it'll be primarily Richard sharing his analysis of literature with us, but my goal hopefully is throughout our conversation to maybe bring in a little bit of Torah ideas as well. Richard already has some Torah ideas of his own, so maybe, you'll fill both hats there. And really, I just want to give the floor to Richard to share a summary of the story of the lottery. Did Phyllis, Audrey, did you get a chance to read it by any chance? Or
no.
Okay.
No.
So I think Richard will share a more in-depth summary.
I read some of it. I didn't.
Some of it. Okay. So we have two. It's good. Richard, it's a good thing we prepared, because Richard had a 1-minute summary and a 5-minute summary. We'll do the 5-minute one just so everyone here knows the story. And then, God willing, once we have a general idea, Richard will get into more details. We really want to make this engaging and welcome questions, welcome conversation. I'll try to moderate, but we all know each other already, so I think this will go really nicely. Richard, was there anything you wanted to say before giving?
I want to just add, I'm going to put a plug in for Poem Alley. I'm active in Poem Alley. It's a group of poets that get together here in Stamford at Shirley's Diner for many, many years, led by Ralph Nazareth, a wonderful humanist. And I've been active there, and I've made presentations there along with various shlichot. I've been working with shlichot in Israel, delivering Israeli music and poetry discussions for the last 5 years. And Israelis in Connecticut, I'm connected with them, and I hosted a number of Zoom sessions with Israelis in Connecticut, and Israel, and Chicago. They were from all over, and we again discussed Israeli poetry and music. So I'm very involved in the written word, and particularly poetry, and the choice of words, because what I'm going to do today is give you a very close textual reading of a brilliant writer. Her name is Shirley Jackson. She has written lots of short stories. The particular story that we're reading is called The Lottery. It was first published in 1948, and it was published on June the 27th of 1948 in the New Yorker magazine. And it was read by so many people, and it elicited the largest number of reader responses in the history of the New Yorker magazine. Many people were going to cancel their subscription. Many people said, if this took place, where can I see this event that Shirley is describing? It was just phenomenal. And since then, it's been made into 3 different TV productions. NBC picked up on it, and they did a serial radio production. This is all available online. There's been an opera done on it and a ballet. So give you a little bit of history here of why we chose it. And the reason we chose it, because it is very concise. It's like Torah. You can read it, and there are many different levels of understanding. And her words, she's a brilliant writer. Okay, so I'm going to summarize it. Around 10 o'clock a.m. on the morning of June 27th, the townspeople of a small village of about 300 souls gather together in a square on a clear and sunny day. The lottery usually takes place about 2 hours, but in larger communities it can take 2 days. The children who have just finished school for the summer gather together quietly before breaking out into boisterous play. And soon they begin gathering stones. Bobby Martin, Harry Jones, and Dickie Delacroix. The villagers pronounce his name Delacroix. They form a pile of stones in one corner of the square. The men gather next for their annual event. Speaking of planting and rain, tractors and taxes, they are followed by the women and the parents call their children over, and families stand together. The local tradition is apparently practiced to ensure a good harvest. Old Man Warner, who you will hear shortly more about, quotes a proverb, "Lottery in June, corn going to be heavy soon." However, some other villages have discontinued the lottery. Rumor has it that the village to the north is talking about giving it up altogether. Mr. Joe Summers, the coal merchant, runs the lottery because, being childless, he has lots of time to do things for the village, like run the square dances, the teen club, the Halloween program. He arrives in the square with a black box, followed by Mr. Graves, the postmaster. The black box isn't the original one, which had been lost many years ago, even before the town elder, Old Man Warner, was born. Mr. Summers suggests they make a new one because the current one is one with age, but no one wants to mess with tradition. Mr. Summers did convince the villagers to replace the traditional wooden chips with slips of paper because of the growing population. Preparations for the lottery begin the previous night when Mr. Summers and Mr. Graves they usually make up slips of paper and put them in the box. It was then locked in the safe at Mr. Summers' coal company. Before the lottery can start, they must make a list showing the heads of families and households in town and must list each member of the household. Mr. Graves then swears in Mr. Summers as the official of the lottery. Some townspeople recall that in prior years, a song had been sung and a salute had been made, but they can't remember the exact details. On the morning of the lottery, the townspeople gather shortly before 10 a.m. in order to be done by lunch. Just as Mr. Summers and Graves are about to begin, Tessie Hutchinson comes rushing into the square. She says she forgot what day it was, but as soon as she remembered, she came rushing to the square. People joke about her late arrival as she joins her husband. After verifying that all families are present, Mr. Summers says the lottery can begin. He goes over the rules. The head of each family draws a slip of paper, and no one is to look until everyone has drawn. Bill Hutchison gets the mark slip, okay, meaning his family has been chosen. His wife Tessie protests that Mr. Summers has rushed him through the drawing, but the townspeople dismissed her complaint. Since the Hutchison family consists of only one household, a second drawing to choose another one household within the family is omitted. We're almost at the end. For the final drawing, one slip is placed in the box for each member of the household, of the Hutchison household. Bill, Tessie, and their three children, little Davy, the toddler, Nancy, who's 12, and Bill Jr., who's older. Each of the five draws a slip, and Tessie gets the mark slip. The townspeople begin to stone her to death. Mrs. Delacroix, quote, selected a stone so large she had to pick it up with both hands. The children had stones already, and someone gave little Davy Hutchinson a few pebbles. It isn't fair. It isn't fair. It isn't fair, right? Mrs. Hutchinson screamed. And then they were upon her as blowing scraps of paper had come out of the box. That is a summary, a 4-minute summary of a story that would take you about 13 to 14 minutes to read. And I'm drawing a breath because there's so much going on here that I want you to think about, number one, a lottery. The name of the story is The Lottery. Now, what do we think about when you think of a lottery, Phyllis? What's the first thing that comes to your mind, Audrey? What's the first thing? Money. That's right. You're gonna, there's gonna be a coupon, and you're gonna get money. You're gonna get rich. Okay, and that's not exactly what happens here. That's a major reversal in the story. That in the story, it starts off on June 27th, and that's significant. It's significant that New Yorker published it on June 27th. It's 10 a.m., it's in the morning, and that's very significant, the setting, okay? The setting is a small village, 300 people. It's summer, and it's quiet, it's a beautiful sunny morning, and people are gathering in the square. Now, is there anything in this story to indicate, from what I've read, and I've been very faithful to the written word, that indicates the time period of the story, the era? Is this in the 18th century, the 19th century, the 20th century? Is it even in the United States? Could it be in Canada? Could it be in England? I mean, where do you guys think this is happening? Okay, that's very important that Shirley Jackson creates a sense of timelessness, that this is a timeless story, that this, whatever is going on here is something that's been going on for a long, long time. And
Richard,
yeah, go ahead.
So I was wondering, is it only me when, you said the summary of the story now, and when I read the story originally, maybe because I like reading Edgar Allan Poe and more macabre, So
Right.
I felt like when I read the story initially that it felt very ominous. This lottery that there's no details given about, and we're slowly
Yes.
learning about the traditions later on. I didn't know someone was going to get killed, but I had a feeling going on that there was something ominous. That something bad was going to happen at the end. I'm wondering, were the readers who read it back when it was first published in New Yorker, did this come as a huge surprise? Did he not suspect anything?
It came as a huge surprise. Shirley Jackson had 300 letters that she had to deal with, and they were screaming at her.
Oh.
They were screaming at her.
I had a thought when I read. I didn't finish it, but when I started to read it, I certainly got up to the part with the stones. I had a feeling that something was amiss with stones.
Yes.
Myself, what the heck are they? What is this with the
This
stones?
is very
Why
old-fashioned,
is it the
very
stones?
biblical.
Yeah, well, not well. You could say biblical. The only thing I know, there was a lottery in the Torah too.
Yeah, I'm talking, I mean the stoning.
And it wasn't, or the stoning was
There
in
is
the
stoning.
Torah.
There is,
But then
there is the penalty of and we'll discuss that a little bit later. But stoning is an important.
I think you're right, Rabbi Kurtz. I also was wondering, what the heck are the stones for?
Yes.
What does that have to do with the lottery?
Right.
Exactly.
So, Phyllis, for someone like you who, who's more trained to see things through a biblical lens, I can imagine you're thinking of those stones as stoning, as capital punishment of sorts.
Well, that's one thing, but I was also thinking in terms of the lottery that when for Yom Kippur you have the two goats.
It's
one
Shirleys
goes-
Husband.
Very good, Phyllis. Very good.
And that was really like strange to me with the stones, the combination.
Oh, that's good. So Richard, actually, you brought that up when we were talking about the story
Yeah.
initially, right?
Yes.
What?
I think
What?
Richard.
Yes. What was your comment? I'm sorry. I'm distracted. I should have turned off my cell phone. It was ringing. Go ahead. Yeah.
All good. What I was saying is that when you and I discussed this story initially, you also brought up that idea of the Seir Lazazel, this how
Yes.
on Kippur there were the two goats, and one of them, depending on the lottery, one of them was thrown off the cliff, Lazazel, whatever that means, as a sacrifice of sorts to atone for the sins of the Jewish people. So, I think, Richard, you and I were discussing what exactly is the purpose of the sacrifice in this story. That's also something that is amiss.
Yes.
It seems to almost be
Yeah,
no rationale.
The whole thing is a mystery. What's the purpose of the lottery? What's the purpose of the stoning?
Yeah. Well, again, consider the statement. Old man Warner. He's 77. He's the oldest man in this tribe of 300 people, and he doesn't even know what the purpose is. I mean, the purpose was forgotten. It's been passed on through tradition from one generation to the other, and by the time it comes to this generation, you have the kids in the square, and they're gathering stones, and they're putting stones in the corner. It's like a game for them. It's something light. It's so light that Mrs. Hutchison Tessie forgot what day it was. She's doing the wash at home, and she comes in and she says to her husband, "What, you don't want me to have the dishes done for you when you come home?" And other comments which I left out. People are telling each other, it just seemed like we did this yesterday, and they're gathering, they seem to be gathering for some type of a social purpose. We're not sure what. The stones are ominous. Now, there is a black box here. And the black box is almost like a character prop in this story. It's very important that this black box is in there, because at one time it was a beautiful adorned black box. I don't want to make analogies, but in our tradition we have the Aron HaKodesh, beautiful parochet, you have the angels, but there was a respect for this black box, and now it's worn down. All you see is splinters. At one time there was wood inside the black box to denote who would win the lottery, and that tradition is gone. And I'm not quite sure why, except I'd say the town has grown and you can't have too many of these little chips in there, So they put little pieces of paper in there. And the people are gathering, and they're speaking, and the men are speaking about the harvest and the tractors, and the women are speaking about school is out, and they're going to have the kids. It's a very casual, laid-back atmosphere. And here they are gathering for this tradition once a year, which I think just happened last week. They're forgetting. And they're, they seem to be almost tuning off to it. It's not going to be me. It's not going to be me. It'll be someone else. But why are they doing this? And there's one statement, I'm coming back to this. Old Man Warner says, lottery in June, corn be heavy soon.
What? I didn't hear. What did you say?
Yes. Say that again.
What did you say?
Old Man Warner says, lottery in June, corn, C-O-R-N, be heavy soon. Okay, now what's the significance of that?
It sounds like it almost sounds like a human sacrifice. You see some of these ancient societies in like South America and other areas of the world where they believe that they wanted rain or they wanted the gods to look kindly upon them for the next season, they had to give a human sacrifice. And that's what it sounds like from those words.
That's exactly what the tradition, what Shirley Jackson is pointing to, that this is a very primitive tradition that has been passed on from time immemorial, and they haven't cleaned it up. They don't put a goat in there like we did in our tradition, or we put a bull in there. If you can't afford that, at least a chicken, split open a chicken. But here they have a human being, one of their lot, in order to assure a good harvest. Now, the people, I left this out, but it's a very important detail. The people are complaining to Old Man Warner. They're saying, look, it's time we give this up. Towns around us have given it up. Down in the north, it's going to happen tomorrow. They're going to give it up. Why don't we give it up? He says, are you kidding? He says, you want us to give it and go back into the cave? Into a cave? I mean, it's so embedded in their minds that this is part of life. It's part of civility. This is the way we maintain the fertility right. It's not like a fertility right. We maintain it. So we take someone's life and we go on, and life goes on, and we don't go back into a cave. We're living off the land. We don't have to live in caves. Of course, when we live in caves, we're killing animals rather than people. But once we get out of caves, we're killing people. We become more civilized, and we become people. A lot of irony involved here. There's a lot of irony. I'm so drawn to the biblical here. That's the reason I approached Rabbi Moshe about this, because there's so much biblical. Why do we need a scapegoat? Why does every culture need a scapegoat? Either a human scapegoat, an animal scapegoat, or an individual scapegoat. Why do we always have to pick on people for various reasons? Why is that? And why must man always be killing his fellow man? Why can't we get along together? These are really, what is it in man's nature that he fulfills by killing another in such a ritual? And why? And why is this ritual continuing to be observed to this very present day, June 27th, of whatever year it is? It seems to be a timeless individual. Why did Cain have to kill Abel?
I was just going to say that. It started in the Bible.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get us to think about. Why is the Cain and Abel story so important that it really virtually one of the first stories that's presented us in the Bible, right after the fall of man? You have the Cain and Abel story. Why is that so significant? And
because people didn't know and still don't know how to connect to some higher being, which we call Hashem or God, or there's no connection.
Phyllis, you pick up a good thing. Shirley does not mention anything about church observance at all. It's all secular here. She talks about
there's nothing. There's no godliness. There's no fear of Shamayim. It's non-existent.
Exactly. Now, there is the black box, which I hinted. That is a symbol which early in the story that you pick up. Why a black box? And why is this black box nearly destroyed? And what's in this box? Why is it just paper? Why, and why were there chips in the box? Okay, so this takes me to a different level, a level of names. Every name, there are very few characters mentioned. Is you have Old Man Warner, and I mean his name and the symbolism of his name should be somewhat obvious. He's a warner. He's warning the people. Look, don't take us back to the cave. Keep it going. It's been done. Don't worry about it, because we're gonna survive as a people here. We're gonna have plenty of grain in the fall. So
I think there are a lot of names here in this short story.
Well, yeah, I mean there are, but there are a number that are particularly significant. Phyllis, I mentioned Warner. The other one is Delacroix.
Yeah, which you pronounce Delacroix. Yeah, right.
Delacroix. Now, what does Delacroix mean in French? Anybody know? Anybody? Okay. Dela means of course. Croix means cross. Cross. It means of the cross. So what we have a reference to the cross, the Christian cross. Okay, and the wood, because the crosses were made of wood. Okay, so you have the cross, and basically the person who was chosen, Tessie Hutchinson, is she's going to be basically put on the cross. I mean, it's a reference to Christian symbols which no longer have meaning in the story because the wood is chopped up, and no one cares about the dignity of this ritual anymore. Let's get through with it. We have 10 to 12, 12 o'clock, got a break for lunch. We have another Zoom session, whatever. But it's the black box. Okay, you have your black box. And
why is it black? Why isn't it any other color?
Exactly, black, of course. Why is the man's name Mr. Graves? Okay, Mr.
Right.
Graves. Okay.
There's the grave. There's the death.
Yeah. I mean, there you go. You have Mr. Warner.
I think the black box, because if you think of it today, the black box of a plane, it tells you what perhaps what happened, what went wrong, why this happened.
I like that. That's Josh. I like that. That's cool. I know. But black, black is an ominous color. I mean, white. If you want to look at white, Mr. Summers is dressed. I didn't mention he's dressed in a white shirt with a tie, and very. He's very properly dressed. Okay. And the kids are out of school and they're properly dressed, and everybody seems to be having a good time here. While we're
ready for a funeral.
Waiting for that's right. Waiting for the funeral. The lynching, if you will. It's a lynching. Very primitive.
Richard, so something interesting that I was thinking of as we were discussing this, just going back to the idea of the sacrifice. They're actually, so I like the allusions that come up in Judaism that we're bringing about Sir Azazel, the sacrifice on Yom Kippur of the goat.
Yes.
We're talking about Cain and Abel, but there's something else that struck me that's very similar to this that comes up in the book of Joshua and Sefer Yoshua. So actually, I'm going to share the screen for a moment just to show you what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever heard of Achan in chapter 7 of Joshua?
Yep.
So the story goes as follows. After, usually we think of the first battle when Joshua comes in. They attack the city of Jericho. They conquer it through the miracles. They blow the shofaros. The walls come crumbling down. It's a miracle. But then the next battle they have, the battle against the city of Ai, they initially fail in that battle. And the Jewish people are in wonderment. They ask, well, how is it that we lost this battle? Isn't God on our side? He miraculously brought down the walls of Jericho only to bring us to the second city and have us lose that battle. So something was amiss. And then they realized that what happened was Yoshua, he declared a ban on all the possessions in the city. He said, these possessions will be brought to God, and no man should take them for himself out of gratitude to God. But what happened was there's a guy named Achan who didn't listen, and he took it for himself and his own family. So the way they figured out it was him was they did like a lottery themselves. If you look over here in verse 17, V'yakreves mishpachas Yehuda, they brought V'yilkodes mishpachas Zarchi, they brought first the tribe of Yehuda, then they brought forward the family of Zarchi, V'yakreves mishpachas Zarchi, like Varm V'yalachet Zavdi, and then they brought forward the different families within there, and then Zavdi was found. The man who was guilty was in that family, and then finally, they found out that it was Achan himself, Achan ben Carmi, ben Zavdi ben Zerach, the son of Zavdi, the son of Zerach, part of the tribe of Yehuda, who committed the sin. And after they do this lottery of sorts, to figure out who is the man that sinned and therefore caused the Jewish people to lose because he broke the ban, you go a few verses later, what's the punishment that he gets? Can anyone guess?
Stoning.
Hila.
So Vayomer Yeshua, Marach Atonu Yakecha Adonai B'yom Hazeh, Vayirgemu Oso Kol Yisrael Even, Vayisrael Sam Be'esh, Vayisklo Sam Ba'avanim. So there is fire involved as well. But if you look, and you can even look in the English over here, and all Israel pelted him with stones. They put them to the fire and stoned them. So I was just thinking, I don't know if this is what Shirley Jackson had in mind, but it seems almost resonant. There's a lottery of sorts over here. They start with the larger family, and then they finally break it down till they get to one man, and then they stone him. But over here, it's interesting. It's not a sacrifice, but it's punitive. He sinned and brought failure and loss to the Jewish people. But this was like something in Tanakh that I was thinking of that was similar to our story. You guys ever read this one?
Right.
They also stoned the women that they suspected of being unfaithful.
Well, the women that they confirmed were unfaithful. If they suspected, then they did the sota.
Okay, I didn't say it right. Okay.
Sota.
The other thing I thought of with a stone, I don't know if you can connect it, is that David slew Goliath with a stone, killed Goliath with one stone.
Yes.
I don't know if that came up. And so it's stone means, death.
Stone is the harshest of all the different punishments in the Bible. Stoning is the harshest. Yeah, it's the harshest.
Yes.
Excellent. Two other thoughts come to mind here, and I thank you for your insight. Of course, one is Jonah and the whale, that lotteries, Jonah is fleeing to Tarshish. Of course, this is something that we all need to think about. That the bad luck that people have is traced to Jonah, the people on the ship, and they have a lottery, and Jonah is thrown overboard. Okay. The other allusion that comes to mind is Saul, King Shaul, who was instructed not to completely destroy all of the possessions. I think of one of the kingdoms that they defeated, and Saul does not listen to Samuel's guidance, and he keeps a sheep. Samuel, how come I hear this bleeding going on? And Samuel, so he had and women. How come I hear women? Saul said, "Well, I had pity. I couldn't do it," and for that reason, Saul, the kingship was removed from Saul. One of the reasons, I'm sure, that the Bible has, he's removed, and he meets his death. He meets his death not through stoning, if I remember correctly. It's through prickling. It's through
suicide
in a bush. Yeah. But yeah, there were a lot of good allusions here. I think that's exciting that we expand this into Torah. And now there are other allusions. Names are very important. We started on the world of names. Okay, there's Mr. Summers. Okay, Mr. Summers is he's the head office. It's summer, and you'd think that everything's going to be, everything's going to be randy dandy. It's a beautiful day. Mr. Summer dressed nicely, and Mr. Summer is he's basically they're Mr. Summer, Mr. Graves are executioners. Okay, they're far from summer. They're more into the winter, the winter of our lives. And now Shakespeare says something. This is the Richard, one of the Richards said, this is the winter series, the winter of our lives. Very, very sad. The down shrinking of life in the winter. So there's a lot of irony going on here. Now, there are more names. Delacroix. Delacroix is making, alluding to the cross, the Christian cross, the wood inside. Everybody has the potential to be a sinner. There's a lot of sins going on, potentially, okay? Everybody chooses a piece of the wood, so everybody has the potential to be executed, okay, by stoning, everybody, okay. So there's that part of it. He's making, and the tradition of Christianity is belittled here, as is Judaism. All religions are being belittled. More names, okay. There's the name of Bentham is mentioned here. Jeremy Bentham was an English philosopher, moralist, 1748 to 1830. He was the father of utilitarianism. And what is utilitarianism? Anybody study philosophy? I had the pleasure of studying at the JCC with Herb Roseman, a brilliant teacher. I studied with him for 3 years, and he taught at Columbia. I went to Columbia, so we had a lot in common. But he discussed Benthamism. Benthamism is it's the greatest happiness of the greatest number that is the measure of right and wrong. How do you measure right and wrong? According to Jeremy Bentham, it's what gives people the majority of people pleasure, okay? And here, you can analogize. Most of the people, they get pleasure out of this. At the end, everybody, even though they may be reluctant, everybody is that woman, she picks up the heaviest stone possible. She's going to drag it down. I mean, they want to, they know there's a benefit that's going to benefit everybody. And so the majority rules, because the majority rules, you have utilitarian. This is utilitarian philosophy. Like Phyllis says, there's no Hashem here. There is no Shemayim. There's no humanity here. It's all superficial. And so it's utilitarianism in its worst form.
Richard, yeah, I think part of what struck me also was at the end of the story is, how utilitarian people were in their mindset that one moment she's good friends, I'm sure, with many people in her community, has relationships, deep sentiments and friendships. And then the moment that she gets the black slip, all of a sudden, people who are friends with her, even her family, they don't even protest. They all turn on her with no sense of reluctance or no sense of, sadness or doubt.
Remorse, sadness, no.
No remorse.
Because
it's almost like a cult. It's like a cult mentality.
Yeah, they're all saying, "I'm glad it's not me."
Right.
That's it. Exactly.
But even her family, even her family, you would think would have.
They don't care. That's not important as long as it's not them.
Yeah, it's a good. So we keep this tradition alive. You have the Akedah should be mentioned too. The binding of Isaac, and my mom, when my mom taught Torah, and this is her today is her yurtzeit, the second of Kislev. She kept saying I was living in California, living a very secular life in California with many subcultures and more subcultures for 20 years in California, Oregon. And I went to a bris. I flew back for a family bris, and so she sent me a beautiful letter talking about how our people, this was the leaving of the cave, leaving the customs of the nations around in the Abrahamic tribe. We're committing this pedicide, if you will, pedicide, killing of children, which was very common in their cultures. And with the Abraham-Isaac story, it was our tradition saying we have overcome that. We've left that tradition behind. We are now more civilized because we have faith in the unity. We have a faith in Hashem. We have faith in a higher force, and that tells us that we have to follow God's way. And we substituted an animal, a goat, in the thicket for the child sacrifice. So there's that. And I'm sure there are other, Phyllis, you'll come up with other connections here to the Torah. I'm sure. Now, there is another connection in the name because I grew up close to the Hutchison River Parkway in Westchester, and Annie Hutchison, Tessie is a reference, Tessie Hutchinson, to Annie Hutchison. Who was Anne? She lived back in the early times of New England, 1591 to 1643. She grew up in England and she came over to the United States. She was a member of the Quaker Church, okay? She was a Miss Nugget, if you will, from Christianity. And she held religious meetings in her home and in America, in Massachusetts, and refused to stick closely to the rules of worship. She was a Miss Nugget, and she required by the Puritan leaders who governed the colony. What happened to her? She was put on trial, convicted, and banished from Massachusetts. So I think that Shirley Jackson, who wound up, her husband was a famous Jewish teacher and a writer, and man, wonderful writings, but a very low character. You can go online and discover who Sidney Hayman was. I can refer to a reference of Hayman. He was not that bad, but he had a lot of deficient character traits treating his students at Bennington College. So she grew up in New England. She was familiar with the New England tradition. Okay, she was born in San Francisco, well-to-do family, and she always thought of, she always had these macabre stories in mind. She's known for dealing with stories of witchcraft and stories of retribution, of penitence, of evil people, because she grew up in a culture. She herself grew up and stayed in a relationship which was very abusive. And if you want to take the story a little bit further, in my humble opinion, she chose Tessie not only because of reference that Tessie is an outcast. She may have felt as an author an outcast, okay? But she is somebody who is a woman. And in society, we have two women that have joined us. Women, there's a big revolution going on. Me Too, women's lives matter. I mean, this is a major issue. And back in 1948, in my humble opinion, she is protesting against the treatment of women. Women they're just not given kavod, if you will. I'm throwing it out because this is very much what I've read the story many times and I've thought about it and I can relate to this woman's personal life as I've learned about it over the time. But that's a very important issue that needs to be discussed. And now the other point I want to mention is that many people who responded to this article, this published in 1948, asked the editors of the New Yorker, where can they see this ritual? It was so real and so dramatic to many readers. They want, where can I go anywhere? Where can I see this actually happen? I mean, that's how real, much of an impression this story made on the readers.
I think Richard, it's interesting style of writing, because when you read some of the older literature like H.P. Lovecraft, they like to write it in a style almost like it's a report, almost like they're reporting something that historically took place. So it's interesting, in the age before internet and being able to confirm things or not, someone could read that and think that it was an actual description of something that took place.
It's an excellent comment, and I'll emphasize that Hemingway was loved because his prose was so crisp and so short, and it was tight prose, and her prose also is tight. It's beautiful, beautifully written. The lines are beautifully written. There's very little elaboration. here. It's cut down to the core, to the bone, if you will. I hate to use that expression in terms of what happens to Tessie, but she keeps it very simple. It's very simple, in accordance with the simple life that these people are leading. These people are attached to the soil. They're attached to the land, very much like we are attached to our land in Israel. It's been very fruitful. And these people are attached. That's the main. That's the utilitarianism of their life. Is they live off the land. They're not living to help each other.
Richard, I really
way.
Richard, I like, the point you just made was making me think about, like you just said, the calculus of sacrificing a human life for the benefit of the land itself, right? Like you said, the corn, right? What was the phrase again?
Yes. Yeah. Lottery in June, corn be heavy soon.
So right. So, obviously it's not the same, but almost like a certain calculus. I don't want to go too deep into it, but when I think about Israel, in our own Jewish community, there's that whole debate about land for peace. And in halachic literature, there's a debate amongst rabbis about, well, on the one hand, we need to save human lives. So if in theory, now obviously we could debate in practice if giving land for peace really works because it's appeasement, etc. But if I knew that giving away land could save some human lives, do we sacrifice lives in order to save more land? It sounds almost like a similar kind of calculus, a similar kind of challenge.
I mean, we have to tread lightly there. We do have to tread lightly because you raise a very politically sensitive issue that won't go away. It won't go away, and we have to respect land. We do. We have to respect people above all. There are people that have lived on lands for long periods of time. I mean, I'm very sensitive to the way Native Americans have been treated in our country. I still am. I mean, and what white man has done. I mean, we are a white man's country, and what we have done, taken away people's lands, and that was their God, if you will. Their sense of divinity was the land. They saw God through the land, through the mountains, through the harvest, through the sounds, through nature. That's one way of we understand that nature is God's accoutrement down here. But they saw God distinctly through the land, and they were disappropriated, if you will. They were, we fought battles and lives lost over land.
For sure.
And
there's a lot.
Israel is still fighting over land and people.
Yeah, of course, it doesn't go on.
It's ongoing.
It's ongoing. It's ongoing.
But let me raise just one other.
By the way, excuse me. I just want to say one. By the way, I don't know if it was mentioned and I missed it, but I think the most connected Jewish story that we should think about when we think about lots is Purim.
Right. Well, the whole
very good, Phyllis. I knew if I goaded Phyllis that somehow Purim was coming.
There's so many things,
That's definitely a communist lottery.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Although Phyllis, I did mention Sidney Heyman, who is the husband of Shirley. She became Shirley Heyman, but she kept her name Shirley Jackson. But she was married to Sidney Heyman from Orthodox roots. Yeah. I mean, he's a brilliant man, and he still is a brilliant critic of literature. But he treated his students in such a derogatory way, and you read it if you want to hear the story. It's not for me to tell it. It's basically that he had many relationships with co-eds at Bennington College, and this is on the internet. It's on Wiki, and he not only did that, but he lauded his conquest to his wife, and that is a form of death. You can kill people by words, by your mouth. That's Mishlei, that's a proverb, but that's the way he treated her, and she had to live through this quote unquote humiliation. And that's just part of the background of the story that I think she's trying to say here. And
Thank you, Richard. And I think definitely there's a lot more to unpack in terms of the idea of sacrifice. And maybe we could find time to discuss that more. It looks like I think we'll end at 12:55 just to give us a little space. Yeah. Both Richard and I have 1 o'clock meetings. But are there any other, Richard, do you have any concluding thoughts? Does anyone have any final questions that we could just use to wrap up?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Phyllis and Audrey for coming.
And Dawn as well. Good to see you, Dawn.
And Dawn. Oh, wow. Okay. Dawn. Welcome, Dawn.
Yeah, I know you can't see everyone on your screen because you have different tabs.
I hope it's a beautiful, shall we say, meeting a crossroads with our brilliant young scholar, rabbi, and myself, because I have been thinking many years about the short story. And of course, I love poetry. Everybody knows that. I'm a poet. My mom was a poet. My mom memorized poetry from England, Ireland. I mean, she had brilliant memory, and I dedicate today's session in her memory, where she inspired me.
I'm having Aliyah.
She inspired me with literature and inspired me in the law. I have a law degree, and inspired me to fulfill the person who I'm meant to be, and the pleasure to be able to join hands with Rabbi Kurtz and make this an ongoing event and get your feedback. If you have stories that you want to share, you want us to think about, to include, please let us know. And Phyllis, I know you have all kinds of more insights to share with us, and Audrey and Dawn. I look forward to hearing them.
All right, thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming to our first session. Feel free to invite your friends, send it around. God willing, we'll meet once a month.
Thank you. Bye.
Story soon.
And we'll keep you posted on the next one.
Thank you so much.
All right, have a good one. Thank you, Richard. Good to see you.
We'll continue.
Bye. Thank you.